So imagine this. You grow up with your aunt rather than your parents and go through a life of immense suffering, end up going to a treatment center and changing your life. Well, meet Michael Hildebrandt. He gets real, vulnerable, and raw, discussing all of these topics, his opinion on not being a victim and rising above the circumstances, ways of thinking that got him to where he is today, his biggest takeaway from going to a treatment center, and how growing up with his aunt impacted his life. Now, before we get into this episode, I want to announce that I will be relaunching the Dear Lovely Universe podcast the week of November 1st. So from November 1st through 7th, there will be an episode every single day, and I'm going to be having a giveaway on Instagram for a $50 Amazon gift card. All you have to do is rate, review, and subscribe to Dear Lovely Universe on Apple Podcasts. I will have more about this in the following weeks, but stay tuned, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hi, dearest lovelies. So I'm here today with Michael Hildebrandt from the Humane Roundup podcast. So Michael is a really amazing guy. We connected on Podcorn, and we're going to be talking about how to not be a victim of your circumstances. So let's welcome Michael to the podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me today.
I'm so excited to have you here. So can you tell listeners more about yourself?
Yeah, but I do have a podcast. I'm an animal control officer by day. I'm a new dad, and I'm 27.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
Yeah,
that's so awesome. So let's just jump into the nitty-gritty. We talked about, how you had to go to a treatment center and stuff like that. How did you get to that point, and what led to that?
Well, I think we got a little miscommunication there. It was a personal development and leadership course that I went to.
Okay.
But I kind of ended up there. I wouldn't say by force, but I had a very persuasive person wanting me to go there, and I eventually ended up there. But I was living in Las Vegas at the time, and a fellow military member of mine was the operations manager at the center, and she, I guess, saw something about me or in me and thought that it would be great for me to go. And she was telling me about it, and I was super pumped to go. And then she dropped the bomb on me that it was like $1,200 or something crazy like that. And so then instantly I was like, I can't go and spend $1,200 on like some random thing that I don't know anything about. And knowing what I know now, I would have spent $5,000 on it because it's changed my life so much for the better. I 100% would have paid any amount of money to go there. But we ended up raising some money, and I was able to go to this personal development and leadership course. The place is called the Choice Center, and it is in Las Vegas, and it's experiential learning type self-help place, I guess would be the best way to describe it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, this episode is a lot about not being a victim of your circumstances. I'm wondering, what does that mean to you personally?
Well, for me personally, I did not grow up the best, and not even with my own parents. My dad was kind of in and out of jail or prison, And then my mom was, I don't know, I guess chasing boyfriends across the country. So I did grow up with my older sister, which was awesome, with a aunt of mine, my mom's sister. And she's just kind of the person in the family who takes care of everyone, whether they're an adult or a child. So I spent many years with her, and also some other family members. Um, and so I would say that for me, a lot of people grow up in not great situations and they let that define them for the rest of their life. And so for me, I now am a member of the Army National Guard. I have a great career, great job, a family, working on buying a house here pretty soon, or I would by the end of next year. So I have definitely turned a negative into a positive, and sometimes, for whatever reason, some people cannot do that, or they kind of let their circumstances or let the cards that they were dealt define where their life gets to go.
Yeah. I mean, that's so amazing. I know you were telling me more in depth before about how all of that growing up was, and it's just so incredible how you were able to build this life for yourself that is very fulfilling and not let the past determine your future. I truly think that it's not what happened to you, it's what you do with what you have. What are your
Yes.
thoughts about that?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like I am a very resilient person. I have, through the Army, gotten certified as a like resiliency instructor or training assistant. And so I did get to learn a lot of tools and skills as they pertain to resiliency. And it's 100% like it's just a part of life that we sometimes get dealt not great cards. And like you said, it's how you react to those cards once they've been dealt with you. And definitely sometimes it takes a lot of resiliency to get through some of the situations that come up in life that I'm sure happen to most of us. So
Yeah. I love how you use the word resilience. That is such a strong, powerful thing. And I think it's not something we're not necessarily born with. We are in a sense, but we have to develop it.
right.
And so that makes me wonder, is there any other traits or character aspects that you feel like are a bonus that you gained from the struggle?
And this may sound like a bad thing, but I feel like for me it's turned into a good thing. But um it's really hard for me to like depend on people sometimes just because of some of the things that happened while I was growing up. But I feel like that's kind of made me a little stronger, and what built my resiliency up a little bit, because I agree, like I don't think people are well, I'm going to contradict myself here in a little bit, but was going to say that I don't think people are born with resiliency traits, but then I was going to also say that I think, like, I feel like it comes to me very naturally. And I attribute that to just kind of my upbringing and sometimes having to fend for myself. Like even when I was growing up with my aunt, while she provided a roof over my head and food to eat, there she was gone a lot working because she was not only taking care of myself and my older sister, but she had kids of her own. and obviously all of the bills and things that come with running a household and feeding all of us and all of that good stuff. So she spent a lot of time at work. She worked two jobs. She would get up really early in the morning and go work at basically CPS. I think back then they called it social services or something like that. And then she would come home, sleep for a few hours, and then go and work at a nursing home at night. So she was gone a lot, and we kind of raised ourselves. So in addition to being very resilient, I would say that I also kind of gained some patience for sure. And then I don't really know what this trait or skill is called, but I'm able to like remain calm in stressful situations. So
Yeah. You know, it's so I I love I love all of those that because it's so true. You definitely accumulate those traits from having an upbringing where you do have to depend on yourself. And it's so interesting because I mean, a lot of the traits that you mentioned are traits that I feel like I have in common as well.
yeah,
And I the part where you say, you know, you don't get stressed out in situations that are like you can stay calm in situations. It really puts like a good place in your head so that you are more level and have much more I'm trying to figure out the right way to say this so it's not offensive to anyone that
yeah,
hasn't gone through, you know, stuff like that. But in a way, it just makes you more, um, like, how do I put it? You have more capacity for stressful situations than someone who
hmm
might have not.
yeah,
And so, well, we might have like, you know, a foot ahead of someone who hadn't. Um, that doesn't mean you know they'll get to that place too eventually because that's just how life is.
right. And I'm not necessarily even talking about I don't know. For some reason, I have this weird thing where I come upon car accidents a lot, and it's great in those situations also because we know in traumatic situations like that sometimes people freeze and they don't know what to do. So a little bit I'm talking about that because a part of my job as an animal control officer, I do come upon some very stressful situations, but I'm more so talking about like the like daily stress of life, whether it's bills or time management or cleaning or whatever. I don't know. I'm able to stay a little more level headed about those things and not kind of like overly stress about situations that I know that I can't control, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. So that leads me to wonder, what are a few ways of thinking that has helped you get to where you are today from those difficult situations?
You know, what I was just mentioning about not being able to not stressing out about situations that you can't control is
Mhm.
I would say the thing that comes up for me the most. And I mean I do find myself sometimes like going down that path and then I have to reel myself back in because it's easy to kind of like get caught up in the like maybe drama dealing with work or the stress of like just normal life. But I would say that's the thing that comes up for me the most is just kind of taking a step back and um, analyzing the situation and trying to determine like is this something that I can control or is this something that's just happening and I'm not letting it control my life or my happiness or whatever, but I'm not going to be stressed out about it because this is something that no matter what I do the outcome is going to be the same, so I'm not going to stress myself out in trying to do something that's not going to change the outcome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I can, I totally validate that. There is a saying, I don't exactly remember who it's by, but, and I don't remember exactly how it goes, but it's like, if you can change, like, basically, can you change it? Then change it. And if you can't change it, then accept it.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a quote by Dolly Parton that I like, and it's something like, "We can't adjust the wind, but we can adjust the sails." So like, we can't control where the wind's gonna blow, like it's gonna happen regardless of what we do, but we can adjust the sails and try to guide us ourselves into the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So there is an experience in my life when I just like, I think my lowest points were in high school when I really wanted to, end my life actually,
Hmm.
and I'm wondering, have you ever gotten to like a really low place, and how do you feel like that has shaped you as a person?
You know, I again, just to say this again, I feel like I'm a very resilient person naturally. With that said, I would probably say that my lowest point having to deal with kind of like my upbringing and stuff was at like one point I was living with my dad at the time. He had gotten arrested again and was like going to jail. And this was like for a few days, like while the like court process was working itself out. But I spent a few days in a boys' home with a bunch of random other kids that I didn't know. And like at that point in time, like everything was kind of up in the air and uncertainty was high. So I would say that was my lowest point. I don't quite remember how old I was. I want to say somewhere around 15 or 16. I think that's like freshman high school age. And this was like during the summer before I started high school. So um, I didn't like think about suicide or anything like that, but it was definitely a pretty low point in my life. And I don't know. Again, I'm really resilient, so I don't think that had that much of an effect on me, or not one that I am like qualified to identify. I would say. I think if I probably spoke to like a therapist or someone like that, they would probably be able to point that out to me. But I don't know. I'm just
Hmm.
again naturally resilient, and I can have things happen to me. I deal with them, and then I keep it moving.
Yeah, for someone who you think may not be as resilient, and by the way, thanks for sharing that story.
Of course.
For someone who might not be as naturally resilient, what advice do you have for those people to that might help them come to a place of better resiliency?
Yeah, I would say probably the best tool for someone that's not super resilient is just to take a pause and like in the heat of the moment, whether it's an argument or if you're just like overly stressed and you're about to freak out, or in those heat of the moment times, just taking a pause and analyzing the situation. I'm very analytical and kind of break things down, but just analyzing the situation. And I'm not saying to just like, I don't know what I'm getting at, but basically I like truly live the like you only live once model. And I'm not saying be irresponsible and like not take care of responsibilities or bills or whatever, but um, I like to like look at situations and say like, is this really worth my energy? Is this worth my happiness? Is this worth whatever I might lose out on by feeding into this stress or this drama or whatever the issue is that I'm being presented with. So I would say that would be my biggest recommendation, is like in the heat of the moment, taking a step back, analyzing it, determining if it's like actually worth your happiness or your stress or your like whatever, and then
Yeah,
making a decision from there.
I think that's really great advice.
And I'm not perfect. I've sent a email or two or a text message or two or said things that I regretted because I was in the heat of the moment, and I totally let myself fall into that trap. But it's for sure something that can be worked at and perfected, and I think overall will make someone happier.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think just to add to that, when someone sees themselves of a higher value, then they will be able to, like, let's say someone has low self-esteem and low self-confidence, they'll be more willing to put up with an abusive relationship. But
Right,
for someone who really loves themselves, they would never allow that to happen.
right.
So I think valuing your own self, your time, your energy is also crucial to determining what you want to allow in your life.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that happens with a lot of people when they are stressed or when bad things do happen. They automatically like turn on their themselves, and they're like, am I not good enough? Like, did I do something wrong? Like, I think they always turn on themselves. And I think self-reflection is good. But at the same time, yourself is not always the issue.
Yeah, no. Actually, what I'm learning more and more and more is that basically almost nothing has to do with you.
No.
Like everything that someone else does is not because of you, it's entirely because of that person. Like, given, I mean, you could reflect on yourself, like, were you abusive and stuff like that. But if you just come out of a place of love, there's just no reason or no way that um this could be your fault. Like, I
Yeah.
think um I saw there was this lady that I follow on Instagram. Her dad would neglect her because he had a drinking problem, and so she grew up wondering to herself, like, what is wrong with me that my dad doesn't want to spend time with me? But the truth is that it had nothing to do with her. It was just her dad.
Yeah. Yeah. And I that is I there's a great book that I recommend. It's called The Four Agreements, and that is one of the agreements is like not to take anything personally, because what other people do a lot of the time doesn't have anything to do with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's so funny is I actually have a whole podcast episode with Lene Owens breaking down the four agreements.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that book a lot.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. I'll include it again in the description. So, Michael, what advice would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Ah, that's a good one. I would say that I would tell myself to be more, what's the word I'm looking for? Be more bold or risky. I think those are the words I want to use, to be more bold or risky. Because when you and I first talked, I did share with you that after going to this conference, that's kind of like when I really started like living or finding my own voice, because up until that time I was like a very shy person and avoided people at all costs. Like I was very happy with just like going to school, going home, like studying, doing my homework. Like I wasn't super interested in like hanging out with friends or going to parties or anything like that. But I think that if I were a little more outgoing and bold and like more of a risk taker. Obviously not an irresponsible risk taker, but like just putting myself out there and like being a part of some of the sports groups or some of the clubs at school, those sort of things that I would have been able to like have a stronger grasp and be the driver in the driver's seat of my life a little earlier than I was. So
Yeah, yeah, I love that. It's so important to be bold and be confident in yourself.
yeah. And I mean, just kind of like the message of your last episode, it's like, what are you waiting for? Like, take some action, get out there and do it because it's not going to just happen by itself.
Yeah, totally. I truly do believe that we are co creators of our lives and we create our realities by our thoughts, our words, and our actions. I mean,
100%.
yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, if you really, really think about it, who's there, who, who's in the driver's seat of your life? You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
what has led you to all of these events that you've ever been through?
Hmm.
So, like, oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I was very much so a people pleaser. So I was more of like a backseat driver. Like I was kind of guiding the path, but the path that I was telling the driver to go was based on what I thought other people would be happy about and not what
Yeah,
was better for me or what made me happy. So
yeah. So, as following the people pleaser route, where did that take you?
you know, not anywhere bad, but it didn't get me closer to where I wanted to be or closer to my goals or dreams or any of that stuff. And uh, once I took control of that, like I'm not rich or anything, but I've accomplished some of the things that I wanted to accomplish in my life, traveled some of the places that I wanted to travel to. Um, I have a family now, a brand new son and a wife. And like I said, by the end of next year, we're hoping to buy a house. And I think if I was still kind of doing my people pleaser thing, that a lot of these things would not be reality for me now.
Yeah, totally. Was there a moment? Was there a moment when you were just like, man, I need to do my own thing? Like, I don't want to listen to what people tell me anymore. Tell me about that.
Yeah, 100%. So at the Choice Center personal development course that I went to in Las Vegas, there was this game that we played called the Red Black game. And we didn't know this going into the game, but they told us afterwards. But basically, however you played this game was supposed to be a representation of like how you live your life. And so the kind of object of the game was for each individual team to vote a certain color, either red or black, and depending on what your team voted and what the other team voted, maybe one of the teams got points, one of the teams lost points, maybe both of the teams lost points or both got points. And so, um, spoiler alert, the point of the game was for both teams to vote black, and then they would have an equal score at the end of the game. And so, after the game was over, they talked to us about how we played the game was a representation of how we lived our life. And I was totally the person that was just kind of sitting in the back, observing everything that was going on. I wouldn't necessarily say that I knew what was supposed to happen. I had an idea about what was supposed to happen, but by no means did I get up and share that information with anyone. Sorry, give me 1 second. So yeah, I didn't get up and share that information with anyone. So Then there were the people that were arguing because they thought that they were right and knew what needed to happen. There were people that just weren't interested in what was happening at all, like they weren't engaged at all. Um, and so, like I said, they later talked to us, and that night our homework was to go home and kind of think about who we were during the game and how that reflects on how we live our life. And so that night is when I kind of came to the realization that it was time for me to kind of take the driver's seat back and to stop being a people pleaser. I didn't think a whole lot on it, but I did make that realization. And then the next day is kind of when it kind of all started and took off from there. When we went back to the center, we went into the room where we had been having our training, and there was just a stage and a microphone and a bunch of chairs set up. And when I tell you I started sweating bullets, when I realized what was going on, I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. There's no way I'm doing that. And then the other side, my little like friend sitting on my shoulder was like, you have to, like, this is going to change everything for you. So I did eventually get up, grab the microphone, so I couldn't change my mind. And I got up there and told my story. And that from that day, like, there's been so many doors that have opened for me and so many great things. And I attribute it all to that moment when I decided it was time to make a change.
Yeah. And that's so incredible. And I'm so happy that you had this moment.
Yeah, 100%. So I have a whole new family now because of it. And if I hadn't have met them, then I wouldn't know my wife, and I probably wouldn't be here in California. So
Mhm. I I really liked how you said that once you made that decision, it opened up opportunities. How do you feel about making decisions? Is that because I believe that once we make a decision, like a concrete decision in our minds, that's when we can start taking the next action steps forward. So, what do you think about that?
yeah, 100%. Like, no, like, even if it's the decision of like, I'm gonna go and do research on this, like, nothing happens without a contract. Or I mean, I guess that's not necessarily true. Like, you could not make a decision and bad things could happen. But I would say, like, most good things start with some sort of a decision, whether that's doing research, or like, I'm just going to go out and do this, or whatever the decision is. And I think that again goes right along with your message from last episode, is like, you have to like make the decision, one, that you want to change, and then the decision to like do what needs to happen in order to make that change happen. So
Yeah,
it's
I think,
very important for sure.
yeah. Yeah, it seems to me like a lot of people want something to happen for them, but they're not willing to take the steps to get there.
Yeah.
And instead of, because see, online, people will see the success or they'll see, the progress or whatever. And even though I try to share my pitfalls and whatever, along the way, I'm just not the kind of person that's on social media 24/7. So
Right.
it's like people don't see the failures. People
Mhm.
don't see the times when I was just like up at 1 in the morning, 3 in the morning. People don't see the times when it's like gets really hard.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's
Well,
like they can attribute it to luck, but it's not luck.
right. And I would say too that our society and the TV shows that we have a little bit are to blame for that. Just like, because this is what I know, like, the Animal Cop show on Animal Planet. Like they'll show you like the scene when the officer or someone calls about some horrible situation happening with an animal, and then within the 30-minute episode it shows maybe the good outcome that happens with that animal, or maybe the officer being able to like take that animal out of a bad situation. But what they don't show is the maybe 3 months of work that went in between of that officer like surfing through information to like be able to get enough information to take that animal away. And I think a lot of things are like that, whether it's building a brand or a business or whatever. Like it doesn't show the start to finish reality of that. And I think um, a lot of people, yeah, get that false sense of like, oh, it's just luck, or oh, it's because it's how this person was raised, or oh, it's because they have money. And I think again, I keep going back to your episode, your last episode, because you had a lot of really great information in there, that anything is achievable by anyone, but you have to like put in the work.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes on behind the curtains that people might not realize. But what's important is to just do it. And I also want to make the point that while I am a very um, like open person, I do share a lot of the struggles and the things I go through. I just want to share with people that you don't have to also share everything with people if you don't want to. Like, you can grind, work really hard in private and not have to share with people your successes and all of those things. You know, while I do think that it is a good idea to talk about, your process, your journey, it could really help someone out. It's really no one's business. Like you're not obligated to share every detail about your life. So, yeah, I just really want to put that out there for someone in case they are a little confused on where to stand.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Hmm.
agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So, what is your biggest takeaway from being in the training program that you went to, the leadership program?
Mm, honestly, I would say it was finding my voice and like getting back in the driver's seat. There were a lot of people there that like wanted to be better parents or better spouse or a better business person, those sort of things. I went there when I was fairly young. I believe I started going there when I was 18-ish. So I was still fairly young and didn't have a whole lot of life experiences or anything like that. So that I think 100% was the biggest takeaway for me. And then I would say one other thing that one of the instructors said is that when we're born with two families: the family that we're born into and the family that we choose. Like just because someone is not our blood relative doesn't mean we can't love them like our own sister, brother, mother, whoever. So
Yeah, that's amazing. And
yeah.
I fully agree. And you know what? Um, sometimes the people that are our blood family don't support us as much as other people. So
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
100%.
also, yeah, it's also important to recognize when to to what kind of company that you have around.
Yeah. Yeah, cuz I mean, yeah, if you've got um bad energy or negative energy all around you, like eventually that is going to consume you and you're going to be a part of it. So I think for sure surrounding yourself with um, the people that you look up to the most, like the more that you surround yourself with people like that, the more successful you're going to be in achieving whatever it is that you're reaching for.
Definitely. Definitely. So, where can people find you online?
Um, I have Instagram. Officer Hildy is my I guess it's called a handle. I don't know. I know Twitter handles are called Twitter handles, but yeah, I'm on Instagram at Officer Hildy, and that's Hildy. Same on Facebook, and like you mentioned at the beginning, I do have my own podcast all about the animal welfare industry. Um, I don't know how stimulating or exciting it would be for someone that's not in the industry, but we do talk about a lot of cool things that you might not know about the um, animal industry, and we're funny sometimes. So
Cool. I'll definitely add those in the description and show notes. Um, do you have any final messages that you want to share with listeners?
I I would just say, and these aren't even my words, but a sponsor of mine on my podcast, she always says, "Own your impact," and I think like those words are like great words to live by, like owning the impact that you're going to leave on this earth, basically. So like you said last episode, taking action, being in control of your destiny, your life, where it's heading, um, owning your mistakes and learning from them, and keeping it moving.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So, my last question is, what does the universe mean to you?
Uh, I don't know. Um, I don't know how to answer that question, honestly. I will say, I don't know, I'm a real believer in karma and Mother Nature, and that good people that do good things and live by good morals are rewarded, and bad people, it may not be instant, but they always get what's coming to them.
Yes,
Is that an appropriate answer?
that is definitely appropriate. Whatever. Um, I just love to ask that question because I love to see how people respond, and however they respond, there is no right or wrong answer. I just love to see how they will respond. So
Yeah,
thank
it,
you.
it's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much, Michael.
absolutely. Thanks for having me here today.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode with Micah Hildebrandt. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family. You can visit dearlovelyuniverse.com for more blogs and podcast episodes. You can find Michael's podcast Instagram at The Humane Roundup. Most full-length video recordings are posted for you to watch on YouTube if that is your preference. New episodes are posted every Friday at 12 a.m. PCT. You can find me at Dear Lovely Universe on Instagram and Facebook. Next week's episode is called Spirituality, Purpose, and Love with Stefan R. That episode is amazing, and I'm really excited to share it with you. See you next week.